Yep. Yes, sir. And YouTube is live now. We are on Facebook, Periscope, D Live, and YouTube, and of course, TalkStream Live and JLP Live as well. Nice, right? What's up, everybody? I am James Hake. It is 9:02 a.m. U.S. Pacific Daylight Time. U.S. Pacific Daylight Time. And we are streaming on all platforms that don't have me banned right now. Twitch has me suspended, right? Twitch has me suspended. But I'm back. First day back, I think, on YouTube. That's cool. I'm going to be touching on this debate thing, and I have quite a bit of detail. Maybe more than you want to know, but I find it interesting. On this guy, this subverter, who's doing these so-called polls, because I came across a poll that said 70% of Americans support same-sex marriage. 70%. 12 years ago, it was 40%. Today, it's 70%. That is what subversion does. Thanks, Obama. But it's not just Obama. It predates him. But he definitely encouraged that madness. So did Joe Biden, actually. Joe Biden supported so-called same-sex marriage, a lie, before Barack Obama publicly did, although we all knew that he was for it. We all knew. J.C. Lee Peterson knew. He was mentioning it. The lying liberal media, including local media, lied and said, no, he says he doesn't. He says he's for traditional marriage. But J.C. Lee Peterson was right. And then Obama lied and said, I evolved. Some speculate other things. But let's stick with what we know, right? So, and I will be also taking your calls, 888-775-3773. Let's get on with the show.
Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la.
What's up, guys? Hey guys, I'm gonna be talking about various things. President Trump was classy last night, but, you know, I don't know, I was left a little disappointed. We'll see what happens. You can call in.
Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la.
So, how are you all doing? Did you enjoy the debate, the final debate between President Trump and Joe Biden? The disgusting, lying, phony person. He grins like a Cheshire cat. And it's ridiculous. A fake person. And Joe Biden is right. This is a fight for the soul of America. But he's trying to kill it completely. And it is ridiculous how dead. I'm imitating him. And Current 93, there's this group that has this drop where this little kid says, dead! And it's really disturbing and creepy. And that sounds like Joe Biden. It's reminiscent of what Joe Biden did with me, in my mind. And I will be also getting to your calls. But President Trump, in this final, quote-unquote third, I call it a third and final debate, because President Trump had a debate between a Joe Biden surrogate last week named Savannah Guthrie, an Australian-born NBC female liberal woman who was just endlessly mocking and trying to belittle and lie and subvert President Trump's message. Undermine. Just a disgusting person. That's Savannah Guthrie last week. When Trump stood up, he said, you guys are wanting to do a virtual town hall? I mean, a virtual debate? Which means by Zoom. It's so ridiculous. He said, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing that. So they did a town hall where he answered questions from the people, purportedly, but these people had to read their questions, so-called hand-picked. It didn't even honestly make for that good of TV. There's Savannah Guthrie, feminist woman, liberal. And President Trump manhandled her pretty well, I would say. And then he had to go against the evil, lying female so-called moderator. What's her name again? Who did it last night? I don't know. She's part American Indian and part black and a Democrat and a liar. And that is typical of the mainstream media. She lied about President Trump. You tweeted out to millions of your followers someone who said white power, which everybody knows was a joke. Kristen Welker. American Indian, part black. You know, when she started, I'm like, wow, she seems confident. Bold, strong voice, strong woman. But as she went on, you could see that she was undermining, like what Jason Lee Peterson says, she was undermining the free flow of the debate, the important issues. She's pretending that this race thing is an important issue. It's only important in that Black Lives Matter and the kissing up to Black Lives Matter and the kissing up to the lies of racism, which have been going on for, 100 years or more, that they have any good point, any valid complaint. They don't. That they are tearing apart the country with their sleazy lies, just like the sleazy lies that she said. I told you guys, well, in my expert panel on the Jesse Lee Peterson show, my part of the experts segment, I pointed out how the so-called white power thing was a guy on a golf cart, an old boomer, maybe even older than a boomer, who's a pro-Trump guy. He was called a Nazi or something like that. He's like, oh yeah, white power. White power. Give me a break. Stupid. That was how he portrayed it. And all of the fake people in the mainstream media, except for a few. Molly Hemingway was one exception. She said, it was quite clear that it was said in sarcasm, said as a joke. Somebody said, you don't joke about white supremacy. Some stupid person on Fox News, a dumb liberal. It's ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. Joelle says, meanwhile, you can kill and murder. Joelle made great points in the experts segment. Make sure you check that out. It was fun. That the stuff that's obvious, they're ignoring. Black Lives Matter, destruction, and lies, and false smears. Lie after lie after lie. Antifa, destruction, murder, going out of control. Not just by Antifa, but also by the black violent crime going out of control. And then they're kissing up to, including President Trump, which is a disgrace that he's doing this, but I don't know if he really knows better or if he knows how to express it in a way that would be so-called politically winning, that black aggression and black violent crime is their problem. It's not racism. It's not a problem. Cops so-called abusing blacks and people in general is not a major problem. There is abuse going on, and it's when there are ill-advised policies and evil policies against men, against whites, against people who don't follow the scaremongering of this COVID thing. And yes, sometimes the cops fall into that thing. Sometimes the cops fall for that stuff. They fall for the, oh, if it's a dispute between a man and a woman, let's arrest the man. That type of stuff. But all this black victimhood stuff, you can nitpick the cops all you want, but the bigger problem is the blacks. And that's not even, they didn't even touch on it. They did not even touch on it. Crime is spiking, right? With the embrace of the attack on police, and they're pretending it doesn't exist. It's like a mass. It is a mass. The emperor has no clothes. This systemic racism is a real thing. And you people at home. I'm imitating Joe Biden. So phony. I hated the mute button. I was mostly just working on a new old JLP video, some archive content. Yeah, and the other thing is about this obvious thing they're closing their eyes to, and the words that they're caught up with. Oh, somebody said white power. Oh, Trump said that black athletes should be fired for expressing their First Amendment rights, which is a complete ridiculous caricature of what he said. He said they're disrespecting the anthem and the flag in America on NFL time in front of everybody. Talk about being presumptuous with the so-called platform that you've been given. It's not a platform to express whatever you want, but they're cowards, the NFL people, and they let them do it, let them get away with it. And like I said in the expert segment on JLP, whites say something way outside of work. It comes up. They might tweet something on their own time. They say something edgy, and it comes up. Somebody calls up their employers, and they get fired. This has happened over and over again. And these people are just ridiculous. So what about the First Amendment for them? But it's not talked about because the media doesn't care about whites. They hate whites. They applaud the takedown of whites, and I'm going to get to that. But they prop up the worst of the blacks, the most squeaky wheel people. The people who are supporting their own and others' destruction. You saw that clip. If you watched the Jesse Lee Peterson show, you saw that clip of Patrisse Cullors. Talk about an out-of-control, throwing her own life away woman. She is apparently not exercising good self-control. Throwing her life away. Openly lesbian, openly Marxist, which is atheist, openly fat, bigger than I've seen. Shocking. Crazy. So that mute button, though, that was disgusting. Trump, I would hear Trump talking, and then suddenly it would cut out. I'm like, what? Why was that necessary? It wasn't. But that's that control freakish, meddling, micromanaging, typical blind, female-minded intellectual stuff. But I did like how his body language was right. His expressions were real. And then Joe Biden was he was immature, insecure, and just fake. I liked how President Trump called him out. I'm going to get to your calls. Maybe touch a little bit more on this so-called debate. Biden supposedly channeled Obama saying, I'm not going to talk about red states and blue states. And then he turned around and talked about red states. But these red states are the ones suffering the most right now. from the COVID thing, the fake, the fake, I call it fake in terms of they're overblowing it and saying Americans want safety and security, female, overprotective, meddling in your life type of fake safety and security. And it's a total illusion of safety and security. And Joe Biden speaking doubt and death and fear into everybody's life. I mean, it didn't work on most of us. So I think most of us could tell that this is a phony guy. I'm not falling for your scaremongering. Meanwhile, Trump, confident, upbeat, positive, like always, honestly, with regard to the COVID thing. Joe Biden accused Trump of adding fuel to the racist fire. Noah's Ark, Kansas with the diamond. Thank you, man. Appreciate the Jesse Lee Peterson and Dark Side of the Bear What hosting the Hake Report on D Live. Mobetta Stand Up gave a Ninja Guinea and said, clarify for the chat, is Nick Cubano or Costa Rica? He's not Costa Rica. He's a little bit, I think he's a little bit Cuban and a little bit, he would have to say Cubano. Cuban. But I think he's part Cuban, but I think of him as mostly Colombian. I look back at him and I shake my head and say, Colombians. Colombano. His flesh, he says, this vessel is, and he's spelling it Culumbano. But in his spirit, I don't know. It's been washed white as snow. So there you go. There seems to be disinformation in the chat. And it's a specific kind of disinformation that he says. Very subversive. Mobetta Stand Up gave a diamond and said, diamond for Joel being present in the HR too. HR. Do you know what that HR is? Hake Report? Hake Report? Oh, nice. Yeah, that's right. He also gave a diamond and said, any strong president will need to push the mute button. I don't know. It would be nice to mute BLM, wouldn't it? Because they are enemies of blacks and themselves. Just throwing their own lives away. Their lives don't matter to them. Getting that fat? I don't think so. It's bad. It's bad for you, right? I will be checking out the Streamlabs people. I may touch a little bit more on this fake racism thing. Biden accused Trump of wanting to ban Muslims for being Muslims. No, he didn't. Unless being Muslim means being terrorist. But no, that's not what he meant. He said we need to ban them because this is too big of a threat, too big of a risk to allow into the country. What size of the population are they, and what proportion are the terrorist attacks by Muslim radicals? It's way out of proportion. If whites were that big of a terrorist threat at supposedly 63% of the country, normal whites do not have the power, right? They've, I don't know, surrendered it some way or another. But they don't, and a few, rarely, but they are resorting to terrorism in their own country, which is ridiculous on many levels. But if they were per capita as terroristic as the Muslim radicals in this country, there would be like nobody left. Everybody would be dead. Hake has a boomer stare, says Ghost Murdoch. Yeah. It's crazy. But you can support, I am live on YouTube but I still am demonetized. I have 2 strikes against me. They're fake strikes, of course. Nothing valid about them. But they accuse me of spam, scams, and deceptive practices. They should do that to Joe Biden. Because that's all he did, was spam, scam, and use deceptive practices. And so did, honestly, that American Indian / black woman. What's her name again? Oh, you guys already been typing so much. Kristen Welker. Talk about a spam and a scam and a deceptive practice from the mainstream liberal media. It's ridiculous. I'm going to touch on this survey that I read about in Hake News at the end of hour 2. They are promoting big time this homosexual thing and brainwashing the kids. And I had a caller this week talk about when you do wrong to kids like that and falsely brainwash them into believing in an LGBTQIA madness. That is evil. He thinks that that's the worst thing you can do. It's certainly evil enough to try to prevent, right? Let me get to Chris in Georgia, a first-time caller. Chris, how are you doing?
Hey. Doing quite well, Hake, man.
Right on.
Hey, I've got it. So my question for you is it ever wrong to assume or stereotype? And the scenario is a buddy of mine, I was trying to tell him, I used to support Black Lives Matter when it first started, and now I don't. Between Jesse Lee Peterson, Colin Flaherty, Candace Owens, and many conservatives, I see why not to. And I was trying to share him my heart and joy of why, and he called me racist. He said he was racist, of course, and then he said his brother got on him. His brother works in an Apple store, and someone was playing music really loud at one of the devices, and somehow or another he just got a hint or whatever. He's like, was the person black? Or he black? Was he black? And his brother called him racist for assuming the skin color, but sexist for assuming the gender. Heck, or I would go as far as say the age. So is it ever wrong to stereotype or assume? That's my question for you in that kind of scenario.
I guess it's wrong to assume, but I don't think it's wrong to stereotype. I mean, stereotypes come about usually for something true. Sometimes, though, for a lie. Like there's a stereotype, oh, whites are racist. and cops are B-words, stuff like that. That's like I think it's a false stereotype. But it's funny because whites are like the least what a blind person who believes in racism would call racist. The least racist people. Maybe unfortunately, because part of that is from brainwashing, and part of it is because part of it is a good thing because they're believe in right and wrong, and part of it is a bad thing because they've been browbeaten into avoiding even the appearance of this imaginary problem called racism. So I don't know if I don't think of it as wrong to stereotype. The main thing is it true or not? And is it truly typical to, the whichever purported stereotype it is it a typical one? Because you have to shrug your shoulders and, hey, they gave themselves this, or they didn't defend themselves against this reputation. If it's a true reputation based on what's common, such as blacks being loud or disruptive or whatever, or if it's a false one based on whites cowering and pretending that this racism accusation has any validity, it's both kind of earned. Whites earned it by cowering, and blacks earned it by offending with being disruptive. So I don't think that it is ever wrong, but it just depends on true or false type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I kind of agree with the assuming thing. mean, you just don't want to be generally, you don't want to be hateful, but that's what I thought too. And I was trying to reach my buddy and say, look, you didn't do anything racist. Maybe you shouldn't assume, but you're like,
Hi, how are you?
good. I'm sorry, I'm in Starbucks. Oh my goodness. I'm getting my.
Dang.
So yeah, so it's. I mean, his life experience brought him to that assumption.
Yeah.
And I know the guy. I know the guy well.
So this is a guy who called you racist, and then his brother turned around and called him racist because he assumed that the guy playing music loud was black.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Right. No, his brother had already called him that.
Oh, okay.
And
so he did unto others. He did unto you what was done unto him.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. Are all of you guys white?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. That's pretty
Yeah,
funny, man.
I'm no longer woke. I now see the truth, and it's a passion of mine. I love black people, but man, I'm just like you and Jesse. We got to call it out if we want true unity.
Where in Georgia are you from, if you don't mind my asking? Around blacks?
Henry County. Yes, I actually work in Georgia at 30349, 30334. It's what the alt-right might call a black ethno-state. So I'm around black people.
Is that Atlanta area? I'm not familiar with that county.
Yeah, South Fulton County, which
Fulton
is Atlanta.
County. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
South. Dang, that sounds black.
Yeah, yeah. There's little to no. There's no diversity amongst the black community, and I was trying to show him that, but yet they want to hold white to this idea of diversity, which is a good thing, and like you said, at the same time, it's a bad thing,
right?
Because it comes with the lie, the fake, the lies, and the accusations. But I was just trying to say it's just trying to expose the hypocrisy of Black Lives Matter and how we as Christians and our conservative counterparts can help them to see how to overcome these lies and be more united.
Yeah.
As a nation.
You know what's...
And I couldn't get to it. Because he called me a racist for it.
That's funny. That's pretty ridiculous. But whatever, man. Whatever. You weren't hurt by it.
I still am at that point where I get hurt and I get afraid. But so long as I talk to you, I got friends in in person that I talk to. Like I said, I'm coming from the left. Basically, I supported Black Lives Matter. I still believe that black victimization was a hoax, even though I supported Trump and was conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've learned, and I still have a ways to go, and not letting those labels bother me.
Yeah. No worries. How old are you?
I'm 42.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But you grew up were you beat up by black kids? Did you grow up in that area?
Yes, I grew up in Griffin, Spalding County, and yes, I've been jumped on more than one occasion by black people.
Because it seems like that's so common amongst the whites who feel the most sorry for the blacks. Like there's this guy who used to be a punk rocker. He's like gray or white haired now, kind of buff. Writes writes columns in LA Weekly over here. I'm blanking on his name, but he was in this punk rock band or something like that.
Henry Rollins, maybe?
Yeah, Henry Rollins. That guy, I think I probably heard this on Colin Flaherty. You mentioned Colin Flaherty, who loves Jesse Lee, by the way. I think he might be interviewing Jesse soon on his podcast.
Yep, he's supposed to be doing it today, I think.
Nice. So Henry Rollins, this guy, according to what I heard on Colin Flaherty, he admitted that he used to get beat up over in New York or wherever he grew up as a kid. And now he's like a anti-racism, dumb liberal male. And even though he's like kind of buff, he is so effeminate in his views. I don't know if I've ever watched him talk, and I'm not that familiar with his music, but
I'm familiar with his music. I am a punker. At 42, I'm still an old punker.
Yeah.
I will tell you, as much as I love punk rock music, Antifa is the logical conclusion of punk rock.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that, and Henry Rollins was in one of the original punk bands called Black Flag.
Okay.
From the late 70s, early. So that would explain why he's thinking that way.
Yeah. He's basically Antifa, huh? Antifa mindset, female. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why do you pause at that?
Pause at what?
When I said he's basically Antifa.
Well, not everybody is Antifa, but Antifa is the logical conclusion
Right.
of punk rock.
Yeah.
So
I
some
didn't
go that
realize that.
far.
I thought it was about thinking for yourself and not following the trendy stuff, but it's completely trendy now. That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
total
it's
suckers.
about but here, true punk is against family.
Right.
They're pro-homosexuality.
Wow.
They're into witch. Some of them were into witchcraft, and from there it went into death metal.
Right.
Yeah, if you just follow the rock and roll genre to this logical conclusion, death metal and punk rock is the heart of punk rock and roll.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rebellion as a lifestyle, and what better than to be anarchist
Right. And then
atheist and hate God.
yeah, but they're the frequently the socialist kind of anarchists. Like they pretend like they don't want USA at all, right? They don't want countries or laws or to be ruled over, but then they just end up wanting socialism. They support Jeremy Corbyn and disgusting people like that from UK. Man, what's weird to me though is why so-called smart liberals don't question themselves or think about the fact that nobody really respects or can respect a group of people such as blacks who 96, 98, 94, 90% of the time all support Democrats. Nobody thinks of them as smart, brilliant, moral, for what's right, and yet they think that liberalism is the right thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yep.
wouldn't you question yourself if an entire, the race with the worst, one of the worst reputations, if not the worst, in terms of being kind of out of control and being a problem to themselves and to other people, is supporting the same thing that you're supporting? Why don't you question yourself and them? It shows like an utter uncuriosity, I think, to people. That's interesting, man. Were you raised liberal or something? What were your parents like? Oh, Chris might have dropped.
No, I'm here. I'm muted by accident because I'm driving and everything. I wasn't raised a Christian, even though being in the South, Christianity is the dominant influence as far as religion. I was raised more hedonistic. There was what we call racism, just hatred. There was that stuff in my family. I realized it for what it was by the 5th grade. And so I never went that way myself. I caught myself in ignorance. Yeah, sure. But never. But I was raised with just typical Southern redneck family that hedonistic.
Okay.
To say the best word.
Interesting,
Does that make
man.
sense?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you say you never became an atheist?
No, I didn't. Before I became a Christian, I toyed around with the idea of Hinduism, psychedelic religion. You know, I went through that hippie phase.
Right. Interesting, man. Wild.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad you're here. Appreciate hearing from you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking my call, man. And I've got to get to work.
Okay.
I'll have to catch up with the rest of your show later on, man. Take care.
Sounds good. You as well. That is interesting to me. How people just like I hear it. I've heard it like multiple times. People get beat up by blacks, and then they grow up, and then they're feeling sorry for the blacks. It's so backwards when they know the reality of the situation. They call it Stockholm syndrome, huh? I guess. That's wild. Pretty interesting. President Trump says he is the least racist person in the room. You know what? And I loved how he said in the room because right away I thought of that woman who attacked him. It's so true. I mean, if you're going to believe in racism, you have to believe that blacks are the worst offenders. They're the ones encouraged to believe in the race thing. and identify with the race thing. And yeah, you're my brother. And if you're not black, you're white. That's why they attack the Asians and the Hispanics. And man, there has been a war between the blacks and Hispanics over the decades. And I think to this day, but I don't have Chris here to make sure that drop happens. And Joel just rolls his eyes. No, I see him getting it ready. But it's wild.
To this day.
Yeah. Man, and the government is it's like the whole world is propped up in a way to lie to you. It's so weird. It just shows you that the people of the world are ultimately about lies. Even the ones who are intellectuals and want to give you facts, they still mislead you with the facts. I'll talk about this survey guy in a sec. Let me get to David from Colorado, a first-time caller. David, how are you doing?
Hey, pretty good, James. Thanks
Hey.
for taking my call.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, I've caught your show from time to time, and truth be told, I thought I was calling into Jesse's show because I was watching a YouTube video, but it turned out to be
okay.
your show.
Nice. Well,
which is actually
welcome.
kind of cool because I've watched your show before, and this is kind of a fun coincidence.
Right. Right on.
So I like that both you and Jesse are very Christian-oriented,
Yeah.
and I am a Christian. I've walked a really hard path to come to that conclusion, like brought down to my knees a few times. And I'm kind of in that position right now. Have you ever heard of the concept of narcissism?
I've heard of it. Yeah. That's
Have you heard of it as a
where
disorder?
a narcissist is somebody who's all into himself or herself.
Yeah, and have you heard of it to the extent of like a psychological disorder?
I have heard of that. I don't really believe in the psychology stuff, but it does go to extremes for sure. Just like anything.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I agree with you. I just kind of use it as a benchmark,
Right.
For understanding because
Makes sense.
I recently became aware that I had been surrounded by narcissists my entire life,
Yeah.
and I'm 48 years old.
Were they male or female narcissists?
Mother and father, older brother, younger sister, all of my girlfriends, all of my male friends throughout my entire life.
Dang. That's harsh. How old are you, if you don't mind my asking?
48.
Whoa. Gen X.
Yeah. Yeah, Gen X, that's right.
Yeah.
And
All of your male friends? Dang.
everybody, yeah.
And how many of these were Christians, do you know? Or that you knew of, that they thought of themselves as Christians?
Well, my parents, we always went to church. We always dressed up. We looked like the perfect, like, sitcom type family, by appearances.
Yeah.
So we went to church, but we never talked about God. We never talked about Jesus. The name of Jesus was never mentioned. To be perfectly honest with you, I think that there may have been a little bit of I guess since I'm sort of anonymous, I could say this, a little bit of a Luciferian background that I wasn't aware of, perhaps, going on.
Okay. Do you want to explain that just briefly?
Well, I'm sure you know where I'm coming from, but...
I don't offhand, actually.
Well, Luciferian is what Jesse tells people. We say you worship your daddy, and Satan is your daddy, and that's basically Lucifer. It's the same thing.
Were they aware of this, or were they not aware?
Oh, I would say that they were most certainly aware, but living very secretive lives.
Oh, wow.
I'm almost talking about Illuminati stuff.
Okay.
And maybe something that I never got partaken in because I've never, well, I'm getting off subject now, but it wasn't just, maybe it wasn't in my nature. See, I've learned a lot of these terms and
Sure.
Growing up.
But this is your parents that you're talking about were into this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
my
you know
parents.
for a fact
I know for a fact what?
that they were into that secretly?
No, just a lot of indications. And see, what I understand, the really base definition of narcissism is someone that does not have the concept of empathy or the ability of empathy for another person.
I don't like that definition. Do you know why?
I don't either.
Because the empathy people are the worst narcissists. That's liberals.
Well,
because empathy is a liberal word,
though,
right?
But those are the people that use the word empathy. There's people who truly feel for other people, and that's what Jesus says: is love your neighbor as yourself. I believe. It's like love each other. Care
right,
about each.
But that's not. I don't know about care about each other, but love is not empathy. You know that, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we could dissect all of that.
Because empathy is imagining that you're feeling somebody else's pain, right? Whether it's usually it's emotional pain, right? Or else it's also if they get hurt, you can empathize with their hurt physical pain. But usually it's like an emotional thing.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine.
And that's not what love is supposed to be.
Well, I mean, that could be a pretty lengthy conversation, I think, talking about what love is.
But it's not. Why am I looking at?
Yeah, but what you're referring to is the quote that I referred to as Jesus. But generally, what I'm talking about, and of course, we don't. I mean, the
reason I jumped on this. Sorry to interrupt you, but maybe not sorry, but I'm interrupting you to say that the reason that I'm jumping on that empathy word is that's not what narcissism is. That's why they accuse Trump of being a narcissist, because he so-called has no empathy for the people, when in fact he has too much empathy, in my opinion. Sometimes he feels sorry for people.
So then he's not a narcissist.
Right, but listen. Listen, this empathy word that's a liberal word to feel sorry for people.
It's just a word that has meaning and it's misused.
Listen.
I can help you understand the correct meaning if you'd like.
Let me just explain let me explain what my understanding of it is. Empathy is the false, I'll say liberal imitation of, the false imitation of love. You know how Satan came as the light? He came as the angel of light. And he comes with all these, God doesn't want you to be equal. We need to bring equality. You need knowledge. And God is uncaring. He sends people to hell.
Well,
he needs more empathy. So that's what empathy is. And it sounds gay. So anyway.
Sure, I mean, because the word's been misused, just like the word liberal has been misused. But I could help you understand the correct
Go for it.
Of the word.
Go for it briefly.
Well, if let's say you're at work and someone that you're close with, that you work with, comes into work and looks a little shaken, and you say, "Hey, what's going on?" And they say, "My dog just died." And then you look at them and you feel sadness for their dog and for their pain. You feel sadness for their pain. That's also sympathy. It's compassion. The ability to have compassion for another person. Someone who doesn't have empathy has the ability to have post-birth abortion because they don't have the sense of understanding of that human being as being a soul. They understand it as being an object that they use, which is what a narcissist does. Which is what I'm explaining to you, is I've been raised and manipulated by narcissists my entire life. And actually, I believe that is very close to
Can I debate with you a little? Can I debate with you a little more about this empathy thing? Because those people who are pro-abortion, they have all kinds of empathy for the children being separated from their parents.
They say they do. They say they do. But those are words.
Yeah, and animals.
Well, I mean, I don't think that you're very informed about this particular subject. I mean, I don't mean to insult you, but I happen to have done a great deal of study basically for my own healing. And it sounds like you're drawing conclusions based upon your opinions, which is perfectly fine.
It's not upon opinions. Yeah. You see these people, these same people who are pro-abortion feel sorry for the animals and the children, and they feel everything. They're
Well,
all
James,
into feelings.
If I can ask you for a moment, can you feel sorry for me?
No. Are you
have
asking
no
me? Are you
compassion about-
asking me to feel sorry for you?
Well, I'm just asking, do you have any compassion for the fact that I've suffered my entire life and I've been manipulated and misused and horribly treated, to the extent that I understand you spoke for the previous caller about how teaching a child false ideas as a child is abuse and evil.
Right.
And so what if you teach a child that their emotions are insignificant? Then when they're wailing and crying and sad and scared, you say, be quiet because you're making things difficult.
I don't know.
And,
I don't know. I don't know what happened to you, and I don't know if
that's one of the things that happened to me. And then we grow up as a people.
I know, but it
because
sounds.
you think the only way that you can please anyone is to be a doormat. And so basically, what it was is placing pearls down before swine is what it was, which is why I understand it to be a sin, which is a mistake. And I made mistakes. And so now what I'm looking at is a lifelong of regret for my own mistakes, for perhaps my own weakness, but I've also been manipulated. So I don't mean any insult to you, James.
You're the one who's 48, right?
I am 48, yeah.
Man, let's see. I think you're dealing with this. You're white, aren't you? Because you're dealing with it in such a white, intellectual way, like learning and studying and dealing, like in order to deal with your pain.
I'm just dealing with this the only way I know how.
Right, I know. I get you. Anyways,
it sounds like you don't have much empathy for me, James, nor compassion, which is perfectly fine. I don't push any judgment upon you, but that
it sounds like you're judging me. You're saying you're judging me, but you're not judging me.
There's a difference between discernment and judging.
You claim this. You claim this, but why does it even your concern what I feel or don't feel for you or whatever? Or whether I have compassion or not. We're just having a conversation.
Well, I suppose it's because I'm in a place of a little bit of difficulty, and I was sort of calling in for some help.
I understand, man. Don't call me for help, but it sounds like you are in like to use a liberal term, which I hate, but the best way I can describe it, you're in like a sensitive place right now. Is that accurate? I feel goofy.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel goofy saying it like that.
How would you describe someone that's been emotionally abused their entire lives and psychologically abused and wasn't aware of it until they finally became 48 years old? And
so you just found this out this year, huh?
Like 6 weeks ago.
Man. Well, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
That's less recent. You got to get past that. You got to come off of that. You cannot be repeating this. You can't.
But you know what trauma is? Trauma is something that happens to you whether you like it or not.
Right, but you don't. But it's not. It's unwise to keep repeating it because you're going to keep yourself.
It is.
You're going to keep on repeating. You're going to keep yourself in this misery.
I know.
A broken spirit dries the bones, as the Bible says. Have you done Jesse Lee Peterson's silent prayer?
Oh yes.
Nice. You do that?
I've studied that for a long time.
You've been at it?
Excuse me?
You've been doing Jesse Lee Peterson's silent prayer for a long time?
Well, I mean, I've been doing that but generally my own prayer for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I've gone up and down like your previous caller. I've gone through it all, like, because I've been so curious about my own identity. Because anytime that I've ever approached a sense of self-fulfillment or self-esteem or understanding of myself as an individual and feeling okay in my skin, others feel intimidated by that because they're close to me, including my family, and they cut me down at the knees, and they do whatever they can to psychologically manipulate me to bring me back down again. And
most likely, David. Well, you should definitely, because I don't think of myself as necessarily the wisest person. So you could call Jesse Lee. You could call Jesse Lee Peterson for counseling if you need it. Stay away from I suggest you do what you want, right? Like what Jesse Lee Peterson says, and I think it's good advice. Do what you want, but it doesn't sound like you need to even be around those people if they're that evil. They did that.
No, what I've done, what I did during this realization is what they call go no contact, and I cut off everybody in my life. So now I'm all by myself except for Jesus.
Okay, cool.
And it's scary, but I realized that what I had been doing was I was wrestling with pigs in the mud. I had my face down there in the trough, and I was eating with pigs. And I was looking for their approval. And I realized that all they wanted to do was destroy me and enjoy just watching. It's like Saul and David and King David, right? Saul was always jealous of David, right? Because of his greatness. And that's what narcissists are. They feel bad. They have to project a false self because they have this horrible lack of self-esteem. So if there's somebody they admire, they destroy that person to make themselves feel better. And that's, in my opinion, Satanism.
But don't worry don't worry.
I cut all those people out.
That's fine. I think that sounds like a good idea. But it sounds like you are getting into judging them and getting into describing what they are when you should know yourself.
Well, there's absolutely that. But again, I use the word discernment. I mean, if you're in a
no, I know, but
tigers, you have to say,
I know, but
these are tigers.
But listen, David, it sounds like you're an intellectual person. And that's why I said that you're dealing with this in a white way, which is you're getting into like naming and describing the stuff that is going on and reading about it as if your intellect, your mind and your knowledge is going to save you from.
What did Jesus say? My people suffer why? For lack of understanding.
Right, but that's not what's. But
I was suffering
but hold on.
for a lifetime because I lacked the understanding.
I know,
which
but
I needed to learn.
But you're not saved by your intellect.
No, but I am saved by understanding where the threat is coming, so I can turn around.
But are you saved yet?
I'm pretty much. I mean, right now, all I have is basically like the after effects, the after trauma that I'm dealing with now. I mean, I am blessed. I mean, it's a miracle. I was homeless. If you've found joy, winter.
If you've found such joy and confidence, then I have to ask why you were concerned whether I have compassion.
I was just asking because it seemed like you didn't.
All right. Well, man.
Just being fair, you know.
Right. I appreciate the call, man. So you were asking me how I deal. Your original question was to ask how I deal with narcissists as a Christian.
What would be a Christian response to like overcoming this, or a Christian understanding of how to kind of like deal with this kind of confusion and healing?
I'm not sure. I would say arm's length with people. Arm's length. You know what I mean by that? Like, don't be
Oh yeah.
Because it sounds like you became the narcissist, just like those people.
I can understand how you appreciate how you could see it that way, but
are you saying you didn't?
That's one of the most confusing things about trying to find help and support for this type of abuse is because it's almost impossible to describe to somebody who hasn't experienced it themselves. So, I mean, basically, you can see black eyes if somebody punches you in domestic abuse.
I'm not saying,
hey, psychological and emotional abuse.
Hey, David, I'm not saying they didn't wrong you. I said that you became what you hated.
And well, I have empathy for other people. I care about other people. I care a great deal if I cause harm or. But
I know, but so think the liberals too, and you know that they're fake.
But then again, they're using the word liberal incorrectly, just like they're using the word empathy incorrectly, just like they do everything. They turn
But the point is,
Star of David upside down because they're Satanists.
The point is,
everything upside.
The point is, you may well be self-deceived and not know it.
Well,
or not self-deceived, but deceived about yourself.
That could be. I would say that that is a hypothesis that's fair, and I appreciate your consideration. However, I think more accurately, I can see clearly now because the rain's gone. I had been deceived my entire life.
It's a nice song.
And I finally have been able to see through it, and no longer put my pearls before swine. No longer long so much for that worldly human connection, and understand that it's okay if I have to be alone and have just the company of Jesus and do my job and live a solitary life. That's perfectly fine. I don't need to show anyone that
Right
I'm
on, man.
any differently.
Okay.
But, I'll tell you that, living for other people's expectations and approval and validation,
Right.
especially when
Not a good
they're
idea.
evil people. That's where I was, and that was the fog. So I appreciate your consideration. It's just that this is a particular journey that I've been on for a long time.
Right.
And I just recently have broken clear of it.
I'm not gaslighting him. See, Jesse on Periscope says, Hake, you're gaslighting him. Come on, man. I'm trying to have a conversation. I'm not gaslighting you, am I?
I appreciate a conversation, and being challenged is fine. It's just
it doesn't sound like you're open.
I think conversation. Excuse me?
It doesn't sound like you're open.
Well, when you understand something with a certainty, I mean, how open do you need to be to discuss, what color the sky is in the middle of the day when it's blue? Like, well, do we need to talk about the color of the sky anymore? Because, I mean, generally, I'm open to all kinds of discussions.
Right. If you don't think that you're not open, okay. All right.
I've been through those conversations in the past. And generally, it's just,
okay, I got you, David. I got you.
Yeah.
Calm down. Because he'll explain away everything, man.
Yeah.
I got to go, David. Nice talking with you.
I understand. Hey, thanks for your time, and I really appreciate you and Jesse. God bless you guys.
You as well, man. Take care.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
20 minutes. That is one of the longest calls I've ever had. So interesting. I gotta get to Skip. I've had him on hold forever in the last couple of minutes of this hour. Skip, how are you doing? From Augusta, Georgia.
Sailing, nothing more than sailing. Do you remember that song?
That's a nice song. I like that song.
It's a beta song.
What song is it? Every song, if I think about it, practically every song is a beta song. Did you hear me this week talking about how punk rock is a beta freaking genre? Oops, I said freaking.
Well, of course that is. But,
yeah, I didn't realize it.
You did a good job of challenging that guy to look into himself a little bit, but
yeah,
he is so good. It was so good at analyzing other people and picking out what was wrong with everybody. And who in the world has ever had that many narcissist friends around him? It's like,
honestly,
he named out a whole family. Hey,
yeah, honestly, I don't think that he's wrong about that. In that, I think most people are very self-absorbed and narcissistic, right? Like if you think about it, everybody's, every, let's say, non-real Christian is all about themselves. What they think of is themselves. They're into something that's wrong, right? So I don't think that he's wrong about that, but you make an interesting point. I mean, it's you see once you learn about something, you might see everybody as that thing. Because you can definitely see narcissistic attributes in everybody, whether they're there or not. But sometimes you do see them in people. But yeah,
one way to tell a narcissist is when you're having a conversation with them about something, and the conversation always comes back to them, and to talk about them, and no matter what you're talking about, it's always going to come back to them. Always comes back to them.
Yeah, although there are people who are a little bit more self-aware, and so they can hide the fact that they're into themselves. You know what I mean? And just kind of change the subject and say, enough about me. To hide themselves. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, look here. I didn't call you to talk about that, but that was a long conversation. I was getting into it, and I was waiting on you. was waiting on you, Hake, and you kind of disappointed me.
How so?
And I think Jesse's gonna get on your butt too. Not one time did you ask that guy if he ever forgave his mom.
Oh, because that's not my thing. 'Cause I really doubt that Jesse Lee Peterson will get on me about that. Because I don't.
Well, really.
Because
it sounds like he hadn't. You know.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point.
Whether it's Jesse asking him or anyone asking him,
right?
That question should have been asked. I feel like
that's an interesting point, Skip. Well, I hope he's listening and he heard that. Maybe it's something to
something to chew on, you know.
For sure. Great point.
Well, look here, I didn't call you to talk about that. I was going to talk to you a little bit about that debate last night.
All right.
What did you think about Biden? I think he run out of gas about 30 minutes into it. You could tell he started getting a little. He was kind of sharp to begin with, even though he was wrong. But he was a little bit. He was kind of sharper than he was last time. But then he started running out of gas.
I didn't really notice.
Just ran out of gas.
You know,
and then he looked at his watch one time, like, how much longer have I got to stay up there for this stuff?
I didn't catch that because I wasn't watching, so I was listening. Okay, and so I would glance over at the TV because I was actually at work that whole time. Mm-hmm. So I was working on the computer, working up a throwback Jesse Lee Peterson video, protest video, and then I would glance up at the screen every now and then, and I would hear stuff and I would laugh. But watching even the clips that Nick prepared for the Jesse Lee Peterson show, I caught stuff, and I did notice that Biden's expressions were phony and insecure, would smile at weird times and look down and be phony and look into the camera and pretend like he's earnest, pretend like he has empathy when he really doesn't. Or he has the liberal kind of empathy. He doesn't have the... and by liberal, I mean evil. Just for the sake of that man who says that that's not real liberal. But
I felt like he shot himself in the foot when they were talking about fracking and oil and everything. And he actually admitted that in, I think it's 13 or 14 years, he plans to have done away completely with oil. Do you know how many jobs that's going to affect?
Yeah, that's a lot.
And all this.
I like how you say "oh."
But he shot himself in the foot a couple times on this. And Trump did a better job this time. Might have been because of that, put silence in the microphone where they couldn't say anything. But he let Joe shoot himself in the foot a couple of times.
Yeah,
and he did a better job this time, I think.
Yeah, I hated when they used the mute button. That was a distraction. It was a total mistake. That was just kissing up to Joe Biden and the dumb intellectuals, I felt.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did constrain him. He did restrain himself a little bit. And I think that thinking back on it, I think he was listening to his people who were advising him to cool it a little bit. So that might have...
I noticed a few times he was wanting to jump in so bad right in the middle of Biden talking, and he'd throw his hand up and look at the moderator like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
I'm not going to do it.
I noticed that too. And you know what? There was one point where Biden said, he said something like that, and I started going, and I wanted so bad to hear President Trump mock him like that. But Trump is not necessarily Jesse.
I think he did a good job, for what he was allowed to talk about and everything.
Right.
I don't know. I don't understand why they just rehashed pretty much everything they talked about in the first debate.
Yeah, that's true.
Did the same question.
Ridiculous.
But he was able to get a little bit in about Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
And the whole corrupt family and how Joe made money off of it, China and Russia and the Ukraine and so I think he did a pretty good job. We just got to wait and see what we got 11, 12 days left.
Yeah, and more people have voted at this point than in previous presidential elections at this point. I think it was, according to like the Skim or CNN, like only 6 million had voted by this point, by this point in October, back in 2016. But now they've been pushing this vote by mail thing. It's so ridiculous. And
Well, I was listening.
we will see. We'll see what happens.
I was listening to Glenn Beck this morning, and he said, made the comment that the majority of the early voters this time were Democrats.
Yeah.
So, with the mail-in voting and whatever. But I don't know. I believe Trump should win by a landslide. But, last time they predicted that Hillary would win by a landslide. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I hope he wins, because we darn sure don't need a Joe Biden in there. We don't need
I know.
Any Democrat in there.
I agree.
But I hope your buddy's listening that called earlier. And,
Yeah.
and go forgive your mama, boy. Go forgive your mama. Get off your knees, and life will get better for you.
Yeah. I hope he, I wish him well, right? Wish him well.
And the other guy you talked to from Georgia,
Yeah.
I feel sorry for that boy. Yeah, the area that he's talking about he lives in, that is a predominantly black area. And
I forgot to ask him about chicken bones.
You should have.
Yeah.
Next time you get somebody around that area, ask them about them chicken bones. They'll tell you.
Okay.
They're everywhere. Chicken bones, chicken bones, chicken bones. Well, look at here. You have a good one, all right? Hey,
You too,
have a
Skip.
good weekend, too, okay, buddy?
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Hang tight, callers and everybody. I'm going to take a couple-minute break, even though it's like almost 10 till. I'll be back in a couple of minutes for the rest of hour 2. What's up, Ron, over there on Facebook? I will get right back to you guys. Actually, I may touch on this person who did this survey about the gays, but I will get to you guys. Appreciate it. Hang tight for the rest of hour 2. So guys, did you hear in Hake News, and yes, this may well be very fake news propaganda. Honestly, it is. America is being subverted, though. According to CNN, about 70% of quote-unquote Americans, I read this in Hake News. Support so-called same-sex marriage. By the way, shout out to John Parfit, also known as Bright Lights, who was singing that song, Breaking the System. Nice. Right on. John, Jon, Parfit, Parfitt. Cut this horrible music off, says a person with the username Krakakilla. Forget you. How do these people get away with having these names? Yes. Beta. Yes, it is disgusting. Even the Pope, Pope says civil unions. That's what the Rhino Republicans, and probably just the Democrats even, were supporting 12 years ago. 12 years ago. Which, if you're nearly 40 like me, doesn't seem long ago. 2008, support for a so-called same-sex marriage jumped. From 2008 to 2010, support for same-sex marriage in 2008 was 40%. That's way too high, but it was 40%. A majority were not for it. Maybe many were indifferent, but the majority were not for it. This imaginary same-sex marriage thing. Then 2010, it jumped to 48%. Thanks, Obama. Yes. Well, they say elections have consequences and elections are so important, and all of us are, all wrapped up in this. But it is also a physical, worldly thing, these elections. I think more important than even the election is true religion, which is to keep yourself from being polluted by the world, right? Isn't that more important? Yeah. Yes, it is important to elect, since we are electing so-called leaders, to elect good people to run stuff up there. Or not good people, no such thing, but decent, halfway decent people. And Trump, I dare say, is a half-decent man. Nice. Which is more than I can say about pretty much anybody else up there. It's ridiculous, but went from 40% all the way up to 48%, 2008 to 2010. Can you believe that? Most of the country was against it. 2015, Supreme Court ruled pretending that same-sex marriage was a valid thing, was a real thing, completely redefining what marriage is. Support jumped to 59% in 2015. 59%. Endless propaganda by the media, by Hollywood, by these degenerate people, brainwashing the children in the schools and stuff like that. Social media. In 2017, 61% supported it, 30% opposed. 2017, that's just 3 years ago. 2020, and this might be biased. Likely is. And I bet you a lot of these people are lying. 70% are pretending that homosexuals can marry. 2020, 28% oppose it. So the opposition just went down 2%. So it's wild. I think it's partly intimidation, pressure to follow the crowd. Children are raised and brainwashed in this culture, and they say, "Oh, you have to change the culture before you can change the laws." That's not necessarily true. They have unilaterally used these liberal activist judges to change the laws before the culture is changed. Right? I think so. Or it's barely changed. They just don't stop pushing. They're evil. And I'm going to talk about this Public Religion Research Institute company. The founder is a guy named Robert Jones, not to be confused with the great Bob Jones. The late great Bob Jones. I'm going to touch on, that's the late great Bob Jones of Bob Jones University, Bob Jones Sr., not to be confused with this guy, who's author of The End of White Christian America and other subversive anti-white, anti-American, anti-Christian books. I'll touch on that. But I want to get to some calls, some more calls. There's a caller named Trick. in Montana who wants to touch on last night's debate. Trick, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It is Trick, because I'm full of tricks, Big Jim Hake.
Right on.
I can tell you this. I got 3 things I want to comment on. I want to piggyback.
We'll do the best we can.
I'll be as quick as I can. I thought Uncle Donnie won that debate, hands down. I thought he was so much quicker on his feet. Biden's canned.
Right.
Again, the cognitive decline was kicking in. And by the way, I vote Libertarian, so I think I'm pretty objective on that. But I thought Trump won that debate.
All right. Were you on the fence about President Trump at all?
A little bit, but I loathe Biden and Harris. So
yeah,
want to see Trump, get in. But there's certain
have you called before?
Principles. I've called one other time.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, but as far as constitutional liberties, I'm a veteran. I live in Montana, and I'm big on constitutional liberties. In some ways, Trump at times disappoints me, but compared to Biden, Harris, I obviously want him in there.
Right. How old are you? How old are you as a libertarian?
I've kind of made the switch the last 3 years.
But how old are you?
I'm 52.
You used to be what? Liberal or conservative?
I would say independent Republican.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Minnesota, and the DFL party there years ago was different than what we have with the progressives taking over. So I grew up in a family that was split, so I kind of saw both sides of the issues. But I just think the Democratic parties went, they went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Union Democrats or what?
Farmer labor, but some connection into the railroad union. My grandpa was a union guy.
Okay.
But my dad was a small business Republican. So anyways, but I don't like the neocons either. That's a whole other subject.
Right. They're basically Democrats. I mean, they're enemies of America.
Oh, if you look at fundamental values of the Constitution, for sure.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So, I served in the paratroops in the 82nd during the Cold War. So I see kind of these issues pretty clear now as far as, some of that old structure and what they really are now. And so.
You remind me, you brought up the word neocon, and I said they're enemies of America. Just to interrupt briefly, did you see that guy Madison Cawthorn, 24-year-old, was it 24-year-old wheelchair-bound young buck businessman? He wrote an article in Daily Wire. I heard that he ran to the right of his opponent, who had been endorsed by President Trump. But this guy beat out his opponent and won the primary. I think did he get elected? I don't know what he ran for. Maybe congressman or something. I don't know. But this Cawthorn guy, he wrote an article in Daily Wire that made Daily Wire look bad and him look bad. It was basically kissing up to this immigrant thing and kissing up to the fake idea of racism. And it was just disgusting. People were calling him a neocon for that. And I even tweeted out, this guy is an enemy of America. Or he's just being used in a bad way. This guy, I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like a young businessman, some type of real estate success.
Well, he's 24. He probably doesn't understand anything yet.
Well, yeah, maybe not. But I think he's kind of a polished, trained politician type of a person. I forget how he lost his legs, but he spoke. It was kind of inspiring to people. He spoke in the RNC, and then he stood up because we stand for the flag and the anthem. We don't kiss up to Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick. So, we liked some of the stuff that he did. But it turns out, he's handled, basically. He's handled. I don't even know if he really believes what he wrote, what he supposedly wrote. Maybe somebody ghost wrote it for him, right? But anyway, that's basically a neocon kiss up.
Yeah, to some level. Yeah. For sure. The other thing I want to say, that caller, when you're talking about narcissism and empathy and sympathy and all that stuff, I think the bottom board issue with that, and I've listened to Jesse Lee and you talk about this stuff. When your emotional person controls truth and your will, you get into some deep doo-doo, and that plays into a lot of the issues in what goes on in urban America with black crime. Is bottom line is you're looking at emotional matriarchal culture.
Yeah, that's true.
And, Jesse hits on that. But so when this guy's talking about narcissism and all of that, there's some validity in those issues. But what he's got to really understand is truth is not emotion.
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I don't think it means that our emotional body is completely annihilated. I think it's just put in the right place.
I think you're right. By the way, are you a Christian?
Am I you know what? I knew Big Jim Hake was going to try to corner me with that question.
Well, I mean, since you're a libertarian, I kind of think that you might not be.
Well, I don't self-identify with the word, are you a Christian? I don't call myself a Christian. I read the Bible a lot. I read scriptures a lot. That's all I can say. So,
okay.
But I don't self-identify. I don't go to I'm not in organized religion. I don't go to a organized church, but I've studied the Bible a good bit. So that's what I can tell you.
Well, you're a nice guy. I could tell by the fact that you're a libertarian that you're either not a Christian or one of those guys that's either alienated from the organized thing or whatever.
Yeah, that's valid.
Anyway.
From the organized thing, amen. Appreciate it. Yeah, for sure. But I love your show and
thank you.
Great stuff. And I think the issue is about constitutional liberties. That's where I'm at.
All right, man. Appreciate that, Trick. Take care, man.
All right. Yes, sir.
Bye. It makes me chuckle and Trick, forgive me for saying this after hanging up with you, but this constitutional liberties thing, it's a tough sell on people who just plain don't believe in real America values, Like this thing, these people who support same-sex marriage, the only group who opposes same-sex marriage still, to this day, to this day, are the white so-called evangelicals, which I never have a clear, solid handle on what white evangelicals are doing. Joel says, I ain't doing it again. To this day, Chris would be doing it back in call and response with me. But everybody else, the POC, so-called Christians, blacks and Hispanic, probably the Asians too, according to this guy who is a subverter, who really cheers on the ending of white American Christianity. What a disgrace. And so I just don't, I mean, I could just imagine what the groypers would be saying about constitutional liberties. But, I think it's for some weird reason, the white Christians, a slight majority of them support that, but you're not going to find a majority of people who believe in, in America anymore, who believe in real, actual free speech. You're going to find that they actually do believe in this thing called hate speech, which means that they don't believe in free speech. And they don't believe in the Second Amendment. They believe in giving it up. And they don't believe in this or that. They believe in racism. It's a mess. But, okay. Maybe we can... Anyway. Let me get to Joe in Phoenix, Arizona. Joe, how are you doing?
Doing well, James. How are you?
Doing fine.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that, black folks are Democrats because they identify with being Democrats. That's not really historically accurate.
They didn't meaning they didn't used to?
No, I mean, even now, there's a recent Pew survey showing that 63% of black folks identify as conservative to moderate.
63%?
63, yeah.
Yeah. Their voting patterns have not reflected that lately.
Well, yeah, the reason why they built Democrat has to do with more of historical factors. Because if you look historically, Republicans have been more in favor of states and supportive of states' rights, and Democrats have been more in favor of a centralized
oppression.
government.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and depending on which group you're in, you see that very differently.
Right. But don't you agree, though, because I know that you're what you call a black conservative, that local control is generally, you can tell that that's a dig about the black conservative thing, because I'm incredulous about that. But
we disagree on many things.
But you would agree that local control is generally way better because you have more recourse. I cracked. More recourse when something is wrong. When we surrender America to the United Nations, which is the track that we're headed for if we go the way that the Democrats want to go, that we're not going to have any recourse.
That's been a false alarm for many decades. We're not going to get control over to the UN, James.
Okay, but anyway, federal government. It's kind of like surrendering control to YouTube or Google. When they're such a huge company, there's no way of getting a hold of any human being in there who's reasonable, especially, who is going to do right by you.
That sounds very
you know what I mean? Like, whereas if it's local control, you can at least confront. People can show up at Jackie Lacey's house, even though I think that it's wrong to do that. I don't just think it is wrong. People can confront the city council, right? If the city council is in control of some of these local things. But if the federal government is in control, you don't have any say. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you do. It's called voting. Anyway, and the last time we talked, you accused me of only bringing up positive black stories that are not moral. So have you heard of the Guild brothers in Maryland?
Guild brothers in Maryland. No.
Guild, G-I-L-L.
Oh, G-I-L-L.
Yes, 3 young black brothers in Maryland who started a candle company, and they donate $500 a month to the local homeless shelters. So they're entrepreneurs and doing philanthropy at very young ages. They're not even teenagers yet, and they're doing this. So
you know what Joel says?
Probably blah blah blah.
No. He's not that dismissive. He says and.
So the fact that you aren't aware of them, or I'm sure Jesse wouldn't be aware of them too, is very, very telling. Because again, you guys never want to promote or even mention anything positive about black folks. But
that's not true.
Any negative story, you're all over it.
I promote Jesse all the time, and he's black.
Well, we disagree if he's positive or not.
And then I regularly say, and I'm not trying to kiss up to blacks, but I regularly say that Clarence Thomas is the best and perhaps only true justice who stands for actual, real justice in the Supreme Court.
Oh, interesting. I mean, now that Scalia is passed on, because usually Thomas would just co-sign his opinions instead of writing his own. So
nice.
It's interesting to see him doing more of that since he's passed.
More of his own writing, huh? Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. But I mean, donating to the homeless, there's all kinds of evil people who are so-called do-gooders who donate to the homeless. And in actuality, sometimes that kind of enables and doesn't really help the situation. That's not necessarily like a moral thing. You know what I mean? There's a whole lot of... What?
Not the point, Jim. The point is that you have 3 young black kids doing the right thing, starting a business, and trying to help others. Whether that help is effective or not is a different argument. But the fact
why is that moral? Why is that the moral thing to do to people?
Well, I'm pretty sure Jesus said, "Help those less fortunate than you." Yes.
He didn't say help those less fortunate than you. He said, he may have said, look out for the poor. Yeah, but he also said the poor you will always have with you. There's a time to help and a time not to, and all that stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Are they? Jesus was not for charity, James. Really?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily for these charities. Yeah. Because look at the Catholics. The Catholics have been subverted, and they're all into this charity thing. Meanwhile, they're surrendering.
Yeah,
It's
I see your comment in chat, Shane, that Trump donates his salary to charity.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but listen.
I've never said that Trump was all evil. I've never said that, Shane. So
oh, yeah, Shane. Yeah, no, but yeah, whites are do-gooders too. But Joe is watching the live chat for those of you who are listening to the audio. What was I going to say? Dude, it's like that's not necessarily a moral thing. Yes, it's nice and sometimes it's right, I guess, to so quote unquote help the poor, but it's kind of like with the Pharisees. But listen.
One of the groups that they help is targets veterans who have come back and have had a hard time. I know you say that,
Yeah.
In the past you said that.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong, and I'm not saying that it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, it's not ever a good thing to do that. But people.
The point I'm making is that there are a lot of positive stories out there about black folks that would be nice to hear you and Jesse highlight.
But that's That's positivity and stuff like that. It's nice. It's feel good. But we have to deal with the problem. When you go to, it's like what the point that Jesse Lee Peterson makes all the time. When you go to the doctor, do you say, "Oh, my right wrist is feeling very positive, but my left wrist is broken. But look at my right wrist." You deal with the problem, man.
Jesse is not a doctor in any way.
Yeah, he is. And then and plus, that stuff is boring. It's a little, every now and then we do a nice story about that there was this black guy who walked 20 miles to work, and then somebody got him a car eventually. That's nice. But I mean, but you're talking about morals. That's not morals. Do those young black kids support homosexuality? Do they support abortion and stuff like that? These people do these PR things about quote unquote helping people, and then they turn around and support everything evil. Illegals coming into the country, upsetting who vote in immoral things and falsely accuse whites of racism and stuff. You were talking when I was talking, so I didn't hear what you said.
I said there's plenty of conservative black folks who are against those things also. Again. 63% are conservative to moderate.
That's just
not liberal.
I know, but you're just making excuses for them voting Democrat because of the states' rights thing, as if that's a reason to vote. That's a reason to vote liberal. It's ridiculous.
It's historical reality. Is all I'm saying.
I know, but historical reality is just an excuse.
No, it isn't.
It is.
It's why it happens.
But it's not really why, because blacks don't even know history. The blacks who are voting Democrat, most of them.
Horrible generalization that you have no proof for.
It's just a generalization, man. Don't take it personally. I'm saying, in general, most of those blacks who are voting Democrat don't know anything about this states' rights thing. Maybe some of them know, oh, yes, states' rights, that's a racist buzzword and dog whistle. That's all they know about it. That's all they know about it. And they don't have a clue.
Like most positions, James, it's been handed down and taught.
Right, rather than seeing for themselves. That's why 90 to 98% support Democrats. That's my point. My point stands.
Absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is why, this is why it happens. But it doesn't mean that most black folks are 98% like Jesse Live support abortion and gay rights and all that kind of nonsense.
By supporting Democrats, they do it. Effectively, they do. In reality, they don't care about those issues. They're willing to surrender their so-called values because they believe in this fake idea of racism.
Anyway, just for kicks, James, try to throw in some more positive stories about black folks. There's plenty of them out there, all right?
I appreciate the request, man. It's good to hear from you. Did you like the debate? Did you watch it?
No, I find the debates tiresome. I mean,
did you watch it?
By this point, pretty much everyone knows who they're voting for, or should at least.
Are you voting for Trump?
You know I'm not.
I didn't know you were not. You're a black conservative.
Yes, and I don't think Trump is a conservative, so, but we're not going to go into that. It'll be just wrong. So
Are you voting for Biden?
I'm not voting for Biden either, no.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate the call, man. Good to hear from you. Kanye?
Right.
You voting for Kanye?
It's a disgrace that he's even on the ballot in some states.
But tell me, did you watch the ad that Jesse Lee Peterson played on his show?
No.
It talked about God and family. Even if you think that it's fake, it was very nice. Check out the ad.
Well, Kanye is, I think he's a sick individual who needs his bipolar meds.
That's mean. I appreciate it, Joe, man. Take care.
All right, take care, bye.
Bye. What a mess. Let me quickly get to Louie in Idaho. I will get to this story, though, guys. I mean, this background on this person, okay? Louie in Idaho, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right today. How you doing?
Doing fine. It's good to hear from you.
Listen, I'm Italian, I'm Catholic, I'm from New York, so whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just joking. Anyway, I was
I can tell.
I was talking about the 25th Amendment. I think Nancy Pelosi is introducing the idea to the American people so that a vote for Biden is a vote for Harris.
Right.
You follow me? I mean, that's
yeah.
right.
That's true. Yeah, because Nancy Pelosi is trying to get Nancy Pelosi is trying to get it so that she and the dumb Congress can be involved in invoking the 25th Amendment or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I can't believe she's third in line. They got to change the law or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I think the third in line should be at least be the same party. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I wanted to say, man.
I appreciate it, Louie. It's good to hear from you. Did you like the debate? Were you awake?
Yeah, I did. You know what? I tuned in half an hour late, but I watched the whole thing over again.
Nice.
It was good. I
Yeah.
think Trump won. Trump took it away, as always.
Yeah.
And he's a winner.
Right on, man.
Win. But you know what? I'll tell you. That one caller scared me to death because you know what? They said Hillary's going to win by a landslide, and she lost. And, you know, I have to vote this year. I don't normally vote, you know, but I have to vote this year because we got all these people from California.
Oh, right.
Coming to Idaho, you know.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just they're coming and corrupting Idaho. Beautiful Idaho.
They're turning the red state kind of like purple, I guess, you know.
Yep.
But I heard that New York is going red. I think, well, not so blue. I mean, I've been, you know, I voted my
that would be nice.
president. My first president was George Bush, the dad.
Okay.
You know? So.
Yeah, I told my mother to vote for George Bush because I heard that he was like Reagan. I was in second grade.
Well, he was Reagan's vice president.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
My teacher said Bush is like Reagan, and so I told my mother to go make sure that she votes for Bush. I was just a kid. I didn't know anything.
Well, what do you think? What do you think about Pence? Is Pence going to take over, or is it going to be Don Jr.?
You know, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think Don Jr. is quite ready. Maybe in 4 years he will be. But
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but Pence, I didn't have any confidence in him before, and I still really don't. But I really love how he handles these, pardon my saying it this way, females who he goes up against, including, I don't know if anybody of you guys saw that Leslie Stahl clip. Maybe I'll have to show it on Monday. But he, like, manhandled Leslie Stahl. She gave this pontificating speech, and he's all, well, Leslie, I appreciate the speech, but blah, 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 blah. And I love how he defended himself and went after phony Kamala Harris and just steamrolled over the female moderator, the 69-year-old feminist woman who didn't change her last name for her husband. I like how he's handling himself in these conversations. I like the fact that he's a fairly conservative, fairly Christian person. He was a real Tea Party person, apparently, right? I think that he came through from the Tea Party. So I like those things about him. I like how he doesn't come off as such a phony politician like Cruz a little bit. You know, I hate to talk badly. I don't hate to talk badly about Cruz, but it feels kind of bad. Feels kind of sad. But I don't like the fact that he is such a polished politician type of a person, but he's less of a disgusting throw up of a politician than the others.
The thing is, he's got an answer for everything, you know, but that's all right,
Yeah.
you know. But if you know what you're talking about, then I think he
Right.
does, you know.
If he becomes strong and solid in his own way, then I would support him. I would vote for him. I would.
Well, I would definitely over Democrats, of course.
Right.
You know?
And in terms of any of the other Republicans who are prominent right now, I don't know anybody else. I don't know anybody else.
Yep, you're right about that.
I appreciate it, Louie. Good to hear from you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Take care.
Again. Take care, bye.
All right. Oh, man. Hang tight, Joe from Florida. I will get to you and my favorite caller, Maze. Quickly, I got to cover this. I read you guys about this survey. It's ridiculous. Supposedly 70% of your fellow Americans, which probably they're counting illegals, support same-sex marriage, which is a new high according to a survey. And of course, they have a picture of the Pope who endorsed same-sex civil unions, according to this ridiculous documentary that was put out by, might not even be a real Catholic. Well, this Robert P. Jones guy is the one whose organization conducted this survey, right? And they've been tracking this survey. Look at this guy. Doesn't he look like a weaselly person that you shouldn't trust? Especially knowing what I just said to you. I don't know if you would know that without the background, what I told you, but look at this is his Twitter profile that Joel is showing you guys. CEO and founder of PRRI, which is the Public Religion Research Institute. He writes for the far left magazine, The Atlantic, extremely far left. They're the ones who published that Ta-Nehisi Coates guy who's a coward won't come on the Jesse Lee Peterson show. He wrote The Case for Reparations, and he brainwashes his son to believe in racism and imaginary police brutality against blacks, disproportionate. What a kiss up. So this guy is a kiss up too. He's white, I think. Might not be a normal white. I don't know if he even pretends to be a Christian. But he's author of White Too Long, The Legacy of White Supremacy in American Christianity. That's, I guess, a newer book. Based in Washington, D.C., the swamp, where he belongs, honestly. And he's written other books, The End of White Christianity, Progress, Liberal, all kinds of dumb stuff, right? So this guy, I look at, he's a subversive communist, basically. America hater. I don't know if he identifies openly as a communist, but basically everything that he's about is lies and evil and anti-white, anti-American, anti-Christian. He's been on C-SPAN promoting his books. Looks like he's my age, give or take 5 to 10 years, you know. Might be in his 40s, early 50s, but he's sort of young looking, but he's sort of a little fat. So it makes him look a little older, but he still has baby face look, but he's a dumb liberal. And I mentioned his Twitter profile. You know, I read some of praise for his book called The End of White Christian America. The End of White Christian America is his 2016 book, which was propped up by New York Slimes, the Washington Compost, The Atlantic. Newsweek headlined this. Newsweek is very anti-Jesse, by the way. They cover him a lot. They're basically right-wing watch part 2. Evangelicals helped elect Trump, but their time as a major political force is coming to an end. I think that's wishful thinking, but if we don't turn things around, they may end up being right, but they're not right yet. He wrote this trashy NBC article called White Christian America Ended in the 2010s. What an evil person. Here's some of his recent tweets. And that article was in NBC, which is ridiculous. Enemies of America, fake news. There's his book, White Too Long, and they made this steeple with a cross on top, but it looks a lot like a KKK hood. White Too Long. What's white too long? America? Christians, like there's too many whites who are Christians. He's basically a liberal who hates the fact that white so-called evangelicals are disproportionately not falling for the fake racism lie. And in this article that we're showing right now, he believes the communist idea of so-called human development. His opening line talks about, like the tumultuous adolescent years of human development, the changes during the teen years of the 21st century. And he talks about disruptive. I think that he's one of those communists who thinks that we should go from capitalism into full-blown communism. Because that's what they want. That's the course that they like to go. And it's so evil. This guy is so phony. What else does that thing say? Of all the changes to identity and belonging, the century's second decade has been particularly marked as a religious sea change, meaning decline of Christianity and morals in America. And I described to you the way that same-sex marriage support went from 40% to 70% in the course of 12 years. This guy tweeted out, if you want to see how racist attitudes impact the two parties' views of protests, see below. Such a stark contrast. He meant stark contrast. And he's showing something from his website, and it says, breaking. And he tweeted this out October 19th. When protesters are specified as Black Americans versus just Americans, support for protests drops by this number of points among these different people. Among Republicans who trust Fox News, 37% fewer Republicans who trust Fox News support the so-called Black Americans who are protesting. Because we know, we who, used to support Fox News, know that those blacks have nothing to be complaining about. They're lying and disrupting and falsely smearing cops, right? And they're rioting. Among Republicans in general, 25% drops. White evangelicals, 20% drops when they know that it's black protesters specifically. Among whites in general, it drops 14%, and he thinks that this is a racist attitude. Among Democrats, it drops 0%, because Democrats are suckers for the blacks, and blacks are suckers for the Democrats. And he says, that's the most depressing finding. He calls that a depressing finding. And you can see the graph below. The graphic reads, racial identity of protesters shapes perceptions of the protests. Not exactly true. It's the way that those racial demographics tends to act in their so-called protests that it changes. And honestly, I don't support even the Women's March, which was mostly everything else. All the degenerate people. And they didn't destroy as much property, the Women's March. They didn't tend to be as violent. But they still are effectively violent because they're supporting abortion, killing the babies. Sick, huh? And that's this blind person. He believes the black perception is more valid than the white's perceptions. Here's more tweets about Trump from last night. He quotes Trump as saying, or paraphrases Trump as saying, I am the least racist person in this room, which President Trump said last night. And he points to Americans. 57% of Americans, so-called Americans, say Trump's decisions and behavior have encouraged white supremacist groups. Well, that's because 57% of Americans are dumb. They listen to the fake news media that lies about him doing that, and they're dumb. So Trump is telling the truth about himself, and all these people have a false impression of him. But he thinks that he agrees with the majority of evil people, right? And then he gives another thing about another little comment about this debate last night. He says, striking answer from Trump. Rather than, listen to this, if you empathy person, if you're still listening. Striking answer. Well, I mean, he knows that they're misusing it, right? Striking answer from Trump. Rather than speaking directly to black families, and he capitalizes the word black, and communicating compassion and empathy. And excuse me, what black families? The black families agree with him, the ones who have families. And then he says, Trump declares that with possible exception of Lincoln, no one has done more for black families than him. Which is true. Which is true. Why do you need to communicate compassion and empathy for blacks? What, feel sorry for them? So this guy is a feel sorry for blacks type of a person. And this person, this guy, even though he's, you know, effectively he's irrelevant to all of us, he's being propped up by CNN and New York Slimes and Washington Compost for his work in so-called surveying the people and cheerleading for the destruction of white Christians in America who don't support the fake liberal values of him. So isn't that interesting? And I looked into the background of who else is in his little organization, Washington, D.C. based organization, and just look at these people. Look at them. Joel's showing one is who has like a lady with looks like something, a towel over her head, international human rights attorney and lecturer, women and POCs, and just look like a bunch of liberals to me. One guy named Alan Abramovitz, a bald. We'll get to it. Joel's showing the various ones. There's this bald woman named the Very Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, like a shaved head. I think it's a woman. It might be a transgender, but I think it's a woman, black woman. The Very Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas. Anytime you see Reverend Doctor, you know it's a liberal. But she's the Very Reverend Doctor. That is wild. So that's the people who are, you know, these people aren't for what's right. Anyway, I had to share that with you. By the way, Barbie has come out with or Mattel. You know, Mattel promoted that fake vlog by Barbie and her black female friend, this cartoon, promoting the fake idea of racism to children, little girls and girly boys. Well, they came out with an Elton John fangirl Barbie doll with homosexual rainbow cuffs and collar, Elton across the front, this big bomber jacket thing, big pink oversized glasses, and just basically a Elton John fangirl hat, and Elton John being like they're promoting everything homosexual about Elton John. Gross, huh? Subversion on your children. Stay away from the Barbie dolls, am I right? And they've subverted G.I. Joe, too. Let's be honest. It went from a real American hero to international hero. Not that G.I. Joe is popular anymore, but they're calling it international hero. Cringy, huh? Cringeworthy. Let me get to Joe, first-time caller in Florida. Joe, how are you doing?
Good, James. How you doing?
Well, I appreciate you hanging on there.
Hey, no worries. Hey, I just wanted to make a quick point about the debate last night. I'm just wondering if maybe you would agree. I think the president maybe missed an opportunity to press Biden on the differences between the red and blue states, not so much as it relates to the lockdowns, but the amount of riots that this year has seen in my 47 years. Forget about the LA riots, the riots in Miami that I grew up. This is more than I've ever seen before in my life. And I wonder if you think he missed an opportunity, not even saying the word Antifa or making Biden not necessarily answer to the American people, but just a 2-minute comment on that, maybe disavow anything as it relates to that. I think there was a missed opportunity.
You know what?
He was trying to...
I think you're right, because that may have been part of my I felt like something was lacking from the debate, right?
Because if you notice, very early on, he was trying to pull a curtain in front of the blue state. We're the United States.
I know.
And that's just as it related to the lockdowns. We don't even need that. We can throw
Right.
that on the floor. Some people need to know just de facto differences between red and blue. What am I voting for? Keep it simple. And I just feel like the president missed an opportunity to say a one-liner and make Joe talk 2 minutes on it.
Yeah, you are so right about that. Like, I've never seen, it's partly because of social media, right? And,
right.
But this widespread rioting around the country, including in cities that you don't know about and I don't know about. Cities like Green Bay.
It's impossible that it didn't get brought up. I find it impossible.
Yeah, that is so true. That is like what I think Joel might have said. It's the elephant in the room. I don't know if that's a Joel phrase, but it's the elephant in the room, the obvious stuff that we've been watching for months. And they suddenly stopped. And you know why they did that? Because they suddenly stopped covering it and all that stuff because they realized that helps Trump. Because people don't like seeing that riot stuff. People see that and they know that that's a Democrat-supported group, Black Lives Matter. And same thing with Antifa. And people don't like that.
Even something very Trump-like, very cutesy, like, hey, Joe, real quick, disavow Antifa.
Yeah, and Black Lives Matter, honestly. They should
let it sit on dead air and let him look into the camera like, wait a minute, I don't have an answer for that. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting point. That is such an interesting point. Yeah,
man.
Interesting, man. But you're so right. I mean, this is why people voted for Trump, because he's bringing out the stuff that's obvious that the media has a blackout on, because they know that that's not going to support their fake ideology that they want. So they turn a blind eye.
He was pigeonholed into a certain amount of subjects or whatever, but I just think a quick one-liner or two-liner and make Joe sit on 2 minutes on that would have been all we needed.
Yeah, you're right.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They turn a blind eye to black violent crime, which has been a major problem, even though it has declined a bit, thank you to Giuliani and some other people and tough on crime stances. But black violent crime is still a problem. It's an elephant in the room. They won't talk about it. The Black Lives Matter riots and Antifa attacks on Trump supporters, those are all widespread, and not just Antifa. People in general are violent towards Trump supporters, but they pretend, the Proud Boys wrote these emails to intimidate voters and say, you better vote Trump or else, when it was probably Iran.
Any one-liner. Those weren't my supporters, Joe. Those weren't my supporters, Joe, bringing down the city. They weren't. Just a one-liner.
I know.
But,
Great point, man. I appreciate it, Joe. It's good to hear from you.
Hey, thanks, man.
All right. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye. We're opening the treasure chest, guys. I know I'm late. Let me quickly, in the last 30 seconds here, get to my favorite caller, Maze from Dayton, Ohio. Maze, how are you doing?
How are you?
Fine. How about you?
This is what the heathens do. I want to know. Is it about a blue state or a red state when you're talking about people voting? Has no clue and nothing to do with your right to vote and why you're voting. That's why I say y'all confused. Y'all call yourself Christian, but you're not godly. When you fear God, God-fearing people don't sound like you are, because you won't talk about the group that wanted to kidnap the governor. Do you think that was good or something that should be done?
You're talking about those people who allegedly wanted to kidnap Governor Whitmer?
You say allegedly, or whichever way you want to put it. You think that was godly, or was it a good thing to do?
If it's true, it's not good. If it's true, it's not good.
Oh, anything that's not that's Christian-like, and y'all keep talking about riots. The only people that's committing problems are the ones that's getting in the way to start a ruckus. And y'all don't realize y'all in the middle of doing things like that, but you look at somebody else is doing it. You don't get it. And y'all the one that don't know why y'all voting. If you're voting for a red state about a blue state, something's got to be wrong with you. If you're not voting for the purpose of making things better, y'all don't even need to go to the polls. And then when you talk about
you make no sense, Maze. Nobody understands a word you just said.
What percentage of elected officials do you think that look like you? 65%. That's what's wrong with America. 65% of you men that are elected officials look like you, and when they having these riots and all this different stuff, just like when they was threatening the governor, did you see any black people or black men involved with them?
Very interesting points, Maze. I appreciate it.
Black people do. Yes, you always talk about what black people do.
All right.
Like I said.
You have a good day, Maze.
Get it together and learn why you vote. And it's
All right.
not about a red or a blue state.
You need to do the silent prayer.
About your rights and the things that you need to
do. The silent prayer, Maze.
I don't need no silent prayer. If I wanted to do yoga, I could do that. But silent prayer.
Yoga? Come on.
What?
You're too old to do yoga.
You don't even took God's prayer and.
Although I got a beta back, so I can't say anything. I gotta go, Maze. Nice talking with you. Have a good one.
Yeah. You have a good one too.
All right. Take care. I gotta read these last super chats before we end it. I am late. David Labarterer up in here trying to market the temple. How does Hake deal with Bible thumpers? Asks Peter from Periscope. Thank you, Mo Betta Stand Up. Opinion on new pronoun awareness training for military. Mo Betta Stand Up. Ridiculous, if true. I think that Trump would put a stop to that if he knew about it or could do something about it, right? So many. Canadian David, man, thank you, appreciate it. Mo Betta Stand Up. Diamond for Hake to get that Joel outro mix. I don't ever share any of my super chat earnings with Joel Friday here. Isn't that a shame? Canadian David gave a diamond. Stop giving them fish, mama. Yes. Joe Maddock gave a diamond. Keep promoting liberal news and views, Hake. Come on, Joe Maddock. Fan of the ladies. I think that was sarcastic. Fan of the ladies gave a diamond and said, defund Planned Parenthood and vote Trump 2020. Woo! Yes. Horatius 14 says, why does he care if some whites don't like others? I lost track of who he's referring to, but it's a good question. Thank you for the support, guys. Appreciate you, Mo Betta Stand Up. Nordic Frost, I think. You're welcome. Canadian David, Noah's Ark, Kansas, Horatius 14. Fan of the ladies, Joe Maddock, Peter from Periscope, and James has great hair. And let me just make sure. Nordic Frost, yes. Thank you, guys. This is Friday. We do have a Fallen State premiere, I do believe, with the NFAC guy. And man, that was a good interview. And you're going to like it. TheFallenState.tv. Who is crazier, Earl Mays or Marcus Jones? Asks Horatius 14. That's for God to know. And me to not worry about. But it's a fair question. JesseLeePeterson.com for Jesse's stuff. TheHakeReport.com for my stuff. RebuildingTheMan.com/church for the current day church stuff, the 2010 church stuff, and of course the silent prayer information there as well. And you can sign up for the subscribe for our physical mail and email list there too. All right, guys. Thank you. Take care.